aren't expecting special forces. That's the point, Sergeant.
Transmit the clearance codes for Inferno Squad Chatter, an exclusive look into the Southwest Star Wars Legion community.
Hello and welcome to a special community spotlight episode of Inferno Squad Chatter. I'm your host Keanu, and today joining me are two community members that are tournament organizers in our community. First, we have Tristan.
Hey there.
And introducing to the cast is Nick.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, Nick. So why don't you tell us about yourself and your background in Legion and how you also became a TO?
All right. Well, first thing I want to say is that I did originally come from Buffalo, New York. The crowd out there, incredible. If you were at Worlds a couple of years ago when I got my invite for it, they all got the same little Buffalo t-shirt to go with the Buffalo. That was super cool, super fun. But yeah, so for me, being in the game since a little bit after COVID, the infamous story that goes around out here in Arizona is from going up to Prescott as the nobody and then everyone telling Mr. Tristan down here that he this invite is his to win, and sure enough I swooped in and took that from him. So
scooped it.
Yeah, that was at my tournament that I was right.
Yeah.
So that was a very fun moment in my Legion career. Ever since that, I've kind of set aside more of having fun lists with the game, doing a lot more. If you see me, I run a lot of crazy lists that span from a randomizer that kind of helps build the foundation of the list. So right now, experimental droids with triple Magna Guard has been the topic for me right now. So that's a lot of fun. It's super cool to get units that people are saying aren't the greatest, getting them just on the table and showing up what they can do. They might not be the best, but showing what can happen with. But as for becoming a TO, realistically, for me and Tristan, it was when Gamers Guild became a second store, so they got their North Phoenix store, and we wanted to incorporate having two ambassadors for the Legion community so that it was easier for us to divvy up the locations per se. So if you have any events down in Tempe, I'll be running those, and then Tristan is the one that runs our Phoenix Tempe ambassador stuff for Legion. From that's pretty much all I have, other than just having a good time with the game. Love playing wonky stuff. I mean, you can ask Colin. He's the one who in the last tales talked about the B2s one-shotting arcs. Those same B2s one-shot a clone shotgun squad, so he's not having a very good time against those B2s right now. But it's just a lot of fun to play the wacky stuff and showing success with it.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and so I would also... Sorry, I wanted to chime in on that origin story. There was also the fact that Eric Reynolds, who had been doing a great job of TOing Arizona for years, he was getting tired of it, and so there was that opening in Tempe that was opening up. And what else was it? There was also the idea of we had the GT on the horizon, and I knew I needed another judge, and it was like, well, the easiest way that I can get Nick some sort of incentive other than just, hey, help me judge this GT, was the idea of like, well, you can be an ambassador for the store, and that comes with its own perks as well. And I sort of attached it to the idea of like, look, you can have this store, but also you got to help me judge this tournament, because I remember so many people were just kind of like, well, I'd rather just play in the tournament. I was like, that's fair, but I need help.
Yeah, for sure.
So Nick stepping up like that was pretty great.
He's a real one, for sure. So in this community spotlight episode, we're just going to be talking about tournament organizing and what that entails, and I'm just going to be asking some leading questions to both Tristan and Nick, and we'll just get their responses. So without further ado, first question is, and let's go with you, Tristan. Like, what is a tournament organizer's role when preparing for one and on the day of?
Sure. Especially in Arizona, because of Gamers Guild, we do get a certain amount of spoiled, just because we have a dedicated store that has play space and that has made it a point to say that they'll allow us to host games, giving back nearly all of all of the cash to store credit for prize support. So we really do have a big advantage in that regard. And so as an organizer, what I don't have to do is I don't have to find a space. I don't have to even really find us terrain, because the store does provide terrain for us. And so for me, for Gamers Guild at least, it's very straightforward in the sense of I submit a form, sit there and say, hey, this is when we want to do it. Like Nick said, I've got North Phoenix, and this is how much it's going to be. This is when it's going to be. I submit 3 different dates, and they give me the green light. Expanding that into Smite Club and Scorched Earth Open, that's brought in a whole lot more logistics, and that's been a neat challenge for me this year. But it's really changed up how much more needs to happen, like being able to provide terrain, being able to provide more prize support, having to divvy up the entry fees into not just what are we going to take for prize support, but the idea of, we need to pay half of this towards the tournament, the bigger tournament organizer, so that we can afford renting out the space. And that's changed the dynamic a little bit. And then as far as day of, we do a lot of TO/judging, whenever it's Nick's tournament or whenever it's my tournament, where we're the head judge for the day, and then the other tends to support the other one as long as we can be there. So that involves, again, judging the day of, but we do opening announcements. We talk about the community. We talk about the rules and expectations. And then we also have to talk to the store. We communicate with the store pretty regularly about getting OP kits, organized play kits, a lot of prize support. And then at the end of the day, we even have to make sure that we're discussing with the store, hey, this is who's getting prize support. This is who's getting store credit. We hand out the prize support. We do closing statements. We make sure everybody's sticking to a decently tight schedule. So it can be a pretty full day, even on our smaller tournaments, right? Like you can have an 8-person tournament, and as a TO, you're still pretty busy leading up to it.
For sure. And going on the prize support and terrain portion of tournament organizing, Nick, I'm gonna throw it over to you because you have made us a lot of prize support and terrain. And what do you do through that process of like what kind of table you make, or like what prize support you build for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the terrain portion of it, when we were first doing the first GT out here in Phoenix, the thing that we were running into was the Gamers Guild had a bunch of unpainted stuff. So I stepped in, grabbed what they had, and painted that up with the ability to try to flex into different landscapes. So it's not just you have a whole bunch of Tatooine, so you have 3 or 4 tables of Tatooine. So I tried to paint it up so that you could do maybe one Tatooine, one can be like a half grayish industrial city, and then another one can be a more forest city or something like that. I've also in the past made some little hills. If you see at Gamers Guild, a bunch of little hills that are like the pink foam, that the insulation foam out on the shelves, I built those. I just left them there at the store because it's change to take care of something like that. But that's where the terrain comes into play, is from the store. For anything outside of that, because I know I've seen a couple people ask the question of what about additional terrain? We resourced out to the community, like that this most recent GT, we had a bunch of tables that had Legion markers that said so-and-so sponsored this table by having this terrain. So there was the Mountain Dew table that was the green crystals. Tristan had a couple of like crate. The map was like a crate theme, and it had a couple TIE fighters on, or the TIE Advance on it. So there's a bunch out there that's been donated by the community for the community, specifically for us. So you won't see those tables out at Gamers Guild. They will be in-house so that we can use those for events to try to incentivize, hey, we have different things to play on than what you do during your weekly events.
And I recently gave you...
Go ahead.
Oh, I recently gave you some boards to work on, to get some of those hills for us as the squad too. So
Absolutely.
Oh,
continue working on
and I
that.
also I also wanted to preface the idea of like when you say that you made sure that there weren't all Tatooine tables, it was literally 8 tables of Legion terrains, like Tatooine city setup kind of a deal, like all the same table. And so for you to paint it up and do all the different things that you did, it really brought it's brought such great diversity to our tables within the stores where yes they're technically the same buildings, but you still at least feel like you're on different planets.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that was a challenge after the first 2 or 3 different styles, trying to figure out what else to do it by, because it's the same building the 8th time, 9th time, 10th time, but I managed to make it work.
And you snuck the Inferno stickers on there.
I did manage to sneak the Inferno label on that. That is correct. I did manage to sneak that on it. But for the second half of the question, the prize support end, I've just kind of thought of, hey, we have this really cool leftover thing. What can I do with it? So the first grand tournament we had, I did with some of the old promos, 3D three-dimensional art cards, which came out super fantastic. I'm sure Keanu remembers them. I think he still has the one for Top Empire because he won the whole dang thing. So,
Which time again?
which time? But yeah, I know this most recent one. I've built trophies because now that I own a home, I have the extra space to wood shop. So I've built trophies out of wood, along with also made some dice trays. Realistically, it's what the community is asking for. Every now and again at the smaller events, I try to throw out at them, hey, what are things you're interested as prize support? Most people will say they want actual units, which is tough to acquire because that'll take out the entry fee, which we turn into store credit for any top players. So it's kind of hard to pull from that to give it to somebody, because if you're asking for commandos, the CIS commandos, and you only come in third, the CIS commandos would go to the top player because that's not a cheap expansion. So that's going to take up the whole. So that's one of the things is why we do store credit so much. But I try to do other things like trophies or little memento, the dice trays. We try to figure out some unique things that are more than just what the event supplies us or what AMG.
Also, what you did with those Yavin medals.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
This comes with the flexibility of doing some other ideas, throwing ideas out there, seeing what sticks to the wall. I know Tristan did the helmets. He's made the Yavin medals that I painted for the squad or for the event. So it's really just a partnership of us and the community to see what people are interested in, and if people don't give us answers, it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go see what other people did that looks super cool. It's just a, hey, I did this as a one-off, and how can I replicate that in a larger scale to hit each faction?
Yeah, I have so much swag from all the tournaments down there that it's like, this is just such cool prize support. Like, it's like whenever we play in tournaments, it's like there's no monetary gain. I mean, sure, you can get store credit to like buy the next Legion expansion, but all the swag that comes out from any of the Legion tournaments I've been a part of has just been so cool to have. And whether that be like promos from directly from AMG or you guys making it, it's been awesome.
There was that time when I was making a bunch of helmets and Keanu should have like a closet full of them.
I have like 4. So,
and there was that other time. Yeah, I can see the Mando helmet behind you.
Yeah.
There was also a tournament that I attended that I don't want to go into too many details, but I bribed the TOs there enough where I was able to bring home a bunch of prize support that we hadn't had access to before.
Oh man.
Nice.
That's funny. All right, so moving on to another question, again about terrain, but this time from setting up terrain. There's been like so many different table orientations out there that have lots of gameplay effects. Like, oh, this building is next to a POI, so I can hide my stuff behind it. What are your guys' thoughts on setting up tables and where you put the terrain? And I'll leave it open to either of you to chime in.
Sure, yeah, I can start us off. So when I know I've gotten from the last GT some slack on a couple tables, but the first thing I will always say, and this is no matter what event it is, however small or however big, we always encourage people to come up and let us know the terrain layout. My counter argument's always going to be, when in war, when is it ever fair? So you really never know what battlefield you're going to be up to. But we do try to make sure we have a little bit of line of sight blocking, a little bit of scatter. Scatter's a little tough because of the things that we have to work with. A lot of the items that we're given are slightly more than half the size of the model. So it's kind of hard to be like, hey, this is light cover when it's realistically a crate that covers you all the way up to your necks. It's tough to be like, hey, here's some scatter stuff. But that comes down to you talking with your opponent.
Tristan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I know that I've been so rude as to even somebody who was criticizing our tables for a couple of tournaments. I sat there and I was like, all right, well, you owe me a table next tournament. You're gonna set it up. And I promise I was not actually trying to be cruel to him, but he did sit there afterwards and go, after his table got a few comments, he kind of went, okay, this is harder than I thought it was. I kind of went, it's but yeah,
I will say the one thing I will say is when I try to set up the tables is, a lot of people like to say how being red player and just guaranteeing an objective and they don't even think to take blue player. I try to put that out there so the red player does have that option of, hey, I want blue player, I want to pick side.
Yes, and I agree with Nick overall. The idea of like, I want tables that are asymmetrical. I want tables that they favor one side or the other, and not necessarily in the most obvious way, right? Like some of the objectives will sometimes favor red player versus blue, depending on what those are. But I do want you to walk up to a table and kind of sit there and go like, okay, I can see an edge that I don't think I want. And I think that's really important to have because, like you said, it's a miniatures war game, and war is never going to be ideal. It's never going to be fair. I think, if anything, we make it a little bit more fair than we could. But I do know that there have been times where, I got set up on a table that was just wide open. Okay. And I guarantee, and I've got a whole nother table that is nothing but buildings and cityscape. And, you can get on either table, and them's the breaks. That's going to be part of the challenge of it all. And I like to mostly keep an eye out for firing lanes, especially with snipers now being kind of reintroduced to the game almost. I think firing lanes are very important to break up at this point with some good line of sight blockers. The new area terrain rules are very exciting, and I love utilizing those. As of right now, we only have so many options for those. We've got some neoprene mats at the stores, but like the Inferno terrain doesn't incorporate a lot of area terrain, and I think we need to. That's a project that I want to work on, is to incorporate more area terrain, because I do really like how that functions as an item, as just another toolkit. And but yeah, and I want to, another thing I want to push more into our goals is just the idea of impassable or like difficult terrain. Like there's some terrain that just like looks really rough and difficult to go through, and I want to incorporate more of that into our tables, just because I do want, scale is a keyword for a reason, right? Or like unhindered is a keyword for a reason, and I think it's worth somebody spending points on. So the way that I try to go about it is mostly the idea of make sure there's plenty of line of sight, make sure there's a little bit of everything on the table that you can think of. And as long as I'm doing that, and as long as I'm not getting too mirrored in there, I'm pretty happy with how a table looks.
Yeah, for sure. There have been lots of debates about having mirrored tables in Legion, and it'll go back and forth of like, well, mirrored tables make it where blue player or red player, like, it's not even a choice anymore, whereas tables that we are more used to at this point of the game's life cycle have that option of like, okay, blue player sure may not get the objective they want, but the table side does matter for fire lanes or something to set up to help you get that advantage.
Line of sight blockers, get your melee in there, anything to help you.
Exactly. And so you had mentioned before about how some people, whenever they go up to a table, and then come out of the game from like, this table was bad for me. how do you, as tournament organizers, combat that in like making sure like people talk about the terrain, but how do you help like a player's mindset to not be so bogged down on, oh, this table is bad, that's why I lost? And Nick, I'll throw that question to you right.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the one key thing whenever that comes up is not only do you need a blue player, but it's setting yourself up for success. It's how can I get myself with the current situation to win? The prime example I want to give, the most recent game I had with Colin, it was contact. And so my thought was, hey, how can I, on this map, get to whatever I want to win the game? Whether that's hiding behind something. I have a 56 point unit I just want to throw out there. Maybe he bites for that bait and I can hit him with something turn 2. It's about how do you navigate the map. It comes back to war is not the same on every battlefield, and you're never going to be able to walk up to the same battlefield twice and say, hey, I can repeat this over and over and over again. If it was repeatable, then everyone would be playing the same thing, everyone would be playing the same objectives. There'd be no diversification in the game. So, but to be able to take criticism as well on the backside is something that I like to hear from other people, because then I can see, okay, yeah, there's a big sniper lane down the middle that I didn't like that. That was missight on my part. Or there's too many tall buildings in the corners of the map, not towards the middle. So, and that's it comes down to too. War never changes, right? It's always horrible, and you can't really win.
And Tristan, I'll throw that same question to you as well from a TO perspective.
I mean, similar to what we've said about units and strategy chatter is the idea of like, give me constructive feedback. If you tell me that you lost because I built a table poorly, then I'm sorry, I'm probably going to snicker and kind of say things behind your back. Like, this was years ago, and this was even before I was a TO. I remember somebody criticizing a table saying there weren't enough line of sight blockers for tauntauns, so the tauntauns could get in there. And it was kind of like, well, tauntauns are a big melee unit. That's kind of a difficult thing to just ensure that they're going to get in there. And why would I necessarily design a table like that? And I'm big on the idea of like, okay, you didn't like the table. Give me why. To explain to me, elaborate on that for me. And I know one of the tables that Nick was criticized for, it was the idea of like, well, there wasn't a lot of diversity in the terrain, and I kind of went, that's fair. And I knew that going in, and it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, that is something that I wanted to work on. Unfortunately, just didn't have the time that I wanted to add to the table, but we put it on there anyway because it felt important we wanted to put as much Inferno terrain on the tables this year as we could. And was it probably a lesser table because of it? Yes. Would I say that it was a bad table? No. I think there were definitely things that could be improved on it, and I don't think I've ever looked at a table and afterwards just been like, this was a perfect table and no notes, we should set it up like this every time. I do want to see it change. I do like seeing things different, and if it means that we get some people who are upset, and if they're willing to chat with me about it, I appreciate that, and I like that, and I'm willing to accept that feedback and kind of go, okay, this is what this table needs to be stronger going forward. And I'm looking at it from a longer perspective of, at this point, this is community terrain, and is this community terrain that we can keep on fielding for years to come, and that we are happy with, as opposed to the idea of like, well, I had a bad turn, I had a bad game with it. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then going on to now the topic of your players at events, a lot of times players will grumble about terrain, dice happenings, or certain events in the game that can weigh on a player's mind. But then there are also events that are like really awesome, cool moments. And I want to just ask you guys about like what cool moments you have seen between your players where everyone walked away happy. But then on the flip side, like what are some moments that you had to like, step up as the head consular or judge and be like, hey, you gotta pull it back a little bit. So Tristan, I'm going to start with you on that question.
What, like when I have a top table at the end of a tournament, at the end of a GT, where a player is going 90% hit rate on attack? Is that?
We need to take that dice away. That's what we need to do.
In this hypothetical scenario that totally didn't happen at the recent GT, yes, let's go with that.
I mean, Colin was a great sport about that, right? Like there was no concern about what was happening there. But that was just, as you're setting that question up, I'm like, oh man, just keep on feeding into this.
I wasn't saying anything about that at all. You're the one that brought it
up. Yeah, as far as like, we've got good interactions, we've got bad interactions. As far as like handling those interactions, it is one of those things where, it is big on trying to talk it through with somebody. I will admit, sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit colder than maybe I should be, but it's also that attempt to be objective, right? Like, I don't want to sit there and necessarily be like rubbing someone's back like, oh, I'm so sorry, bud, like, and it come across as any sort of favoritism, as much as I'm just kind of like, this is a game, we're here to have fun. Let's play through. I get that you're having a negative experience, but let's keep on going. As far as positive experiences, love those, right? Like, love it whenever somebody's sitting there going like, hey, I just full blocked on 8 white dice, and you're kind of like, okay, like that's fantastic to hear, right? Like, I get the other players kind of going like, I don't know, like, hey, come on, we can all appreciate that dice variance is going to be dice variance, and that can be, I try to make sure that it's lighthearted enough where, hey, this is, let's try to just appreciate that this was an anomaly, and that, moving on from there. As far as negative experiences, definitely had plenty of those, and I can think of plenty of times off the top of my head, more times than I'd like to think about, but those stand out more, right? We're humans, and that tends to be what'll stick out in your a bit harder. I do know, I remember there was at one point where there was some criticism about the idea of whenever anybody rolls into this guy's tray, they're just rolling better, and I'm kind of going, okay, like I understand that this sounds a bit fishy, but this is also a 10-person tournament. If this is where we're cheating, then I don't know what to say. Like, I don't think the stakes are high enough where we're magnetizing a dice box or something wild like that. So, I try to tackle it from the perspective of, we have the speech at the beginning where we talk about sportsmanship and we talk about everybody being there to have a good time, and I try to focus on the idea of like, are we having fun? What can help with that? And I'm also not beyond bribery. I mean, there have been some people who have had rougher days, and I'm like, hey,
I'll fly you that crinkly dollar to play Keanu.
No, from the TO perspective, it's the idea of like, oh, look at that. You got a couple of stickers. What for? Random, but we want to make sure that everybody has, at the end of the day, has a good time, right? Like, if that means that we swing them maybe a little bit more swag because they did have kind of a rougher day, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, not at all. And Nick, any what positive, like, great moments have you had while TOing and going up to tables that players are like both like laughing about certain moments?
So my favorite moments are whenever when I'm walking around the tables and I get up to a table and someone's like, hey, I'm rolling 15 dice right now, and I'm like, how are you managing 15 dice? And it's like the crazy stuff, like B1 Super Squad with the E5C, and they're throwing just a bucket of dice, and they're like, I actually get to hit the whole dice pool because my B1s haven't been. Like, that's what we want to see. We want to see those massive, just, sure, it's a big lottery shot. Why not?
Zombie Cassian is up to bat.
Zombie Cassian. But those are my favorite moments, when you're walking up to a table and they're in the middle of an attack sequence, and they're like, defensively, sometimes it's the roll of the eyes. I'm rolling cover for 7, and then they're like, I just stopped 5 in the middle of that roll. You're like, don't knock your cover. Roll it through. And then same thing with saves. They'll roll the man, I got 5 red, 5 health in this unit, I'll be okay, and you flat out blunt. Those moments happen, but you gotta continue through it. You gotta continue.
For sure.
On the flip side, though, same thing as Tristan. You have those moments where not everything's going in your favor, whether it is dice, terrain, objective, maybe everything isn't going your way. It's the sportsmanship end. You got to try to have a good time, still work with your opponent. I know things that we try to encourage, but at the same time, you don't want to do all the time because that's bitten me at Worlds. Is walk with your opponent on, hey, here's some other options to do. Are you sure you want to do that? Just to let you know, that's going to put you at range of this for me to hit you with harder, especially when you're on the upper end of when you're winning the game and you want to try to help your opponent to catch up a little bit to make them feel a little bit better, to encourage them to keep going instead of just pummeling them into the ground.
Yeah, I think that's a good mindset to have. I know as a player, I love it when my dice goes well, but I also love it when my dice go poorly because that's also a story to tell. And again, like with my opponents, if their dice are hot or if their dice are cold, it's like, it's a story that we're telling this game. And it's always like the biggest of moments you were not the, oh, here's another like, oh yeah, I 100% hit on this unit again. But it's like the moments of like, oh, I blanked 3 red dice on Din and he's just dead now. But yeah, definitely hearing guys' perspectives from TOs, like making sure the sportsmanship aspect is always appreciated, because end of the day, it's like, this is our plastic miniatures game that we play for fun. So we gotta make sure everyone has a good time.
And I try to be a sympathetic ear for people. I know Kevin had a rough time at one point during the GT, and I was trying to be supportive, but I also, again, it was the idea of like, okay, I can only do so much, need to be a certain amount of objective. But yeah, those moments, like I remember there was one game where Din missed Boba with the Amban twice, and it was back in the day with recover the supplies, and Boba had a bounty on him, and Boba had a box in hand, and just the fact that twice that Amban missed, and it was one of those things where my opponent and I were both laughing about it.
The moments when both people laugh about it. So we keep talking about the Arizona GT, so I think we should address that. How was it preparing for both last year's GT and this GT that had happened? And Nick, I'll throw that to you now.
Yeah, so the first thing I will say is head count. Head count is super important for not only prize support end of it, but how many tables do we need to set up? Do we need to work with the store on acquiring more terrain if needed, or maybe instead of coming in the day of to set up, maybe there's so many tables that we need to come in the night before and set up for the previous night so that we're ready to go in the morning. So player headcount is very important for us to know as soon as possible. I think this year we were up to 14, 13, 14, something like that. And then the week of, a lot more people started jumping in, so we got up to that 20, 21, 22 number, and we're like, all right, do we have enough terrain to cover this? And we didn't really have, we had plenty of terrain to work with, but it was the fact of, hey, do we have enough prize support that we're happy with to try to supply with people? Are we happy with the amount of terrain so we can make sure tables are diverse enough? So headcount is really important for that part of the event, was knowing the headcount.
Yeah, Tristan, any thoughts on that?
I stressed out a lot over the planning for the GTs because for me, I was still relatively new to being a TO, and to sit there and get a GT knowing full well the idea of like, hey, there's only about a dozen of these in the US per year, that felt like a lot of pressure at the time. It's lessening and lessening as time goes on for some strange reason. One of the hurdles that we had this last year, we had a lot of what I would call our mid-tier players that just couldn't make it for personal and other and occupational reasons. Like there were a lot of people who couldn't make it, but that ended up working in our favor because as large as North Phoenix is for a store, we could have only handled one more player realistically, because between Shatterpoint, MCP, and Legion, we just ended up eating up all of the large tables, and so it was the size was pretty good for us. Even though I'll admit I was disappointed that we were down to 19 as opposed to the prior year we were at 25. But we still managed to, it's still good numbers. That's still a pretty healthy tournament size, especially having 7 people from out of town. But that first one, I was very stressed out, and I had I don't know if I shared all of my plans with Nick, but I had all sorts of plans. I had all sorts of notes. I had all sorts of documents where I was just trying to keep things organized and making sure that I had good opening notes. I had never written a player packet before, so I'm sitting there and copying LVO's player packet and sitting there going, okay, well, what adapts to us? What doesn't work out for us? I was, there was a lot of stuff that I was doing just kind of on my own. And I think that was even before Keanu, you had gotten me into the TO Discord. So there was a number of stuff where I was doing things that I was reinventing the wheel and I didn't have to. And I will admit that TO Discord is really great. I think it's so supportive for smaller tournaments, larger tournaments. Like, everybody on there seems very supportive and very happy to help, and I really appreciate that. But yeah, these GTs have been stressful in the sense of, like, we want to have a good showing and we also want to make sure everybody's having a good time, but we also want to hold to AMG standards, right? Like, it's very different to sit there and go, okay, I ran a tournament, some people had some fun, but the idea of, like, hey, this is potentially something that's going to have ripples throughout the community, throughout the Legion community overall. The idea of, like, hey, this is a GT, and again, there's a dozen per year in the States. 2 of them happen at stores, and 1 of them just happens to be in our backyard that we're running. That is a decent amount of weight for us, right?
Definitely, because Gamers Guild is a pretty large store, and I'm sure they have a lot of levers to fulfill. Going on to player count, I know we've mentioned a lot on player count. With that comes a lot of judge calls. Have either of you had any unique judge calls that you had to, like, go look up? And if you don't know off the top of your head and connection may be not the best, how do you guys deal with judge calls in the heat of the moment? Nick, we'll start with you now.
Yeah, so the one thing that Tristan and I always agreed on, especially when we co-host the larger events, is we kind of have to do it to the best of our ability, to what we remember. It is challenging, especially when rules change, to be able to, on the fly, go, hey, this is what's different, right? And some people will remember old versions of it, and some people also try to counter you on the old version. But ultimately, in the tournament packet, the organized play packet,
Can I give a quick shout out to Stephen Cobb and all of his efforts at the recent Rocky Mountain Open? The fact that the forums were down and that dude was making big judge calls.
Oh yeah, that was probably a nightmare.
Sorry to interrupt, but, like, that dude
No,
deserves like a shout out for all that he did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it comes down to the organized play packet, or the Galactic Conquest packet, where I believe it says right in there that what the judge says goes. And there have been moments, I've heard some horror stories. I'm going to throw a shout out to Z on this one. I hear this story all the time, every now and again. The triple moving Maul, when you can't triple move with Maul. The judge at that time at the LVO he went to, or you guys went to, the judge said, yeah, you can do that. You can triple move Maul. You can't move Maul. It specifically says in the text that Maul can do 2 moves and then whatever else. So, and that those moments do happen. They do happen, but it's just something you have to work through. And the one thing that Z did help us with at the recent Smite Club was he had some moments where he made a judge ruling, he was able to find it and then go back to that table and was able to be like, hey, this thing was fine, or hey, this thing was not fine. I'm going to have to add that body back. Or, you're going to have to slide back just a little bit. You're going to be outside of POI range to figure out a way into POI range now. So there is that whole factor. Now, if the game goes on too long, you might not be able to retcon whatever decision you make. But if you're lucky enough, maybe 1-2 activations go by, you can swing on back in and be like, hey, no, that's actually, I was wrong. You only get to do a blank instead of a blank, and then be able to fix the game where not too much has happened.
For sure. Tristan, any judge calls that you have had specifically where, you've had to walk something back, or that when you looked it up, it was like, oh, wow, this is actually really interesting to realize how this works?
Nope, my judge calls have been correct every single time. No need to ever walk it back.
Hey, dice has been rolled. It stays that way.
Yeah.
That was one thing that I wanted to bring up, was the idea of we've tried to say in our opening remarks that generally speaking, we're going to have the attitude of after dice have been rolled, a decision's been made, and we as judges are going to say everything past that are those decisions. The decisions before those dice were rolled are locked, because now the results of dice. We're not going to change that. But as far as we've generally started to incorporate a policy of trying to stick to faster judge calls, just because we want people playing, right? We don't want people sitting waiting for us to look up rules. And as far as, I can't think of off the top of my head where I've had to walk back a rule. I know editor Tristan stepping in on this after re-listening to the episode. I remembered that there was a judge call that I had with Zuff and Keanu during their match where a unit had died. It was in melee, but there was another unit tied up, and there was no way that it could cohere to, I want to say it was Din. And at the time, I ruled that the unit was still in melee, and I think we might have even moved some miniatures around. And after the fact, I learned that no, that isn't the case. You can actually die to enough of an extent where the whole unit had not been eliminated, and they were able to effectively die enough to get out of melee. And so I came back and had to try to correct for it. At that point, the game had pretty much moved on, but that was my mistake. And both players understood the situation, and unfortunate that I got it wrong in there, but I don't think anybody would say that it necessarily swung the game either way. And hey, I'm human, same as everybody else, and it was just something that we addressed in the moment and learned it, moved on. Sorry if I got a few of the details wrong. It is a month after the fact. Anyway, I know that I've gotten them wrong. I will flat out admit that. I know that there have been plenty of times where I've had to sit there and go, you know what, I'm sorry I got that wrong. This is what it should be. And then just the idea of like, okay, going forward, this is what you need to be doing. As far as to me, one of the bigger, more interesting rulings that I had to do, the first GT, was the idea of 2 players that had not properly identified their secondary objective. And I'm comfortable with the judge call that I made at the time, where I said, you know what, there was a lot going on, and I basically said, you know what, we're gonna act as though there's no secondary objective. And in hindsight, I have a different perspective on what I would do going forward. And I would rather, we've even said it at tournaments now, where the idea of like, if players are disputing the game state that much, we're going to have you reset the game state, and you're going to start your game over again. And we've kind of hung that over people's heads on purpose, out of the idea of like, don't do this. Like, it's up to both players to define that game state. And that was something that I had not been prepared for, because before the tournaments, I do try to read up on the rules. I try to make sure that I have a good grasp of the rules. And again, I get things wrong plenty of times. And generally speaking, those things are pretty easy to fix and correct. But the idea of a game state like that, I hadn't prepared for that, and I went into that very unsure of what was the correct answer. And at the end of the day, as the TO, as the head judge, this is your call to make. You have to make a call. You have to do something. And I made a call, and good, bad, indifferent, I made the call. And yeah, even on the TO Discord recently, I remember I highlighted that part on the on the Galactic Conquest document of even if the judge is proven as incorrect later, you're sticking to their call.
Yeah, definitely. And it's harder to make calls about certain things when it would be something in the forum specific and it hasn't been asked yet, or it has and they just haven't gone around to answering yet. I know one thing that took a little bit to finally get answered was Thrawn's 2-pip, where you discard the card for an effect, either move or shoot effect. And there was a debate about, like, well, if Thrawn is defeated, do you still get to discard that card? People saying yes, people saying no. But then, finally the forums were clarified it where, yes, even if Thrawn is defeated, you can still discard the card for its effect because you're not playing the card. And playing a command card for a character that has been defeated is not what you're supposed to do. And if you do end up playing a command card that for a character that's been defeated, you have to swap that command card for standing orders. So I'm sure as tournament organizers go, it'll be harder as more units come out and more rules get updated to be like, hey, forums need to get updated with this, so I'm just going to make a call right here and now, and we'll find out later.
Yep, and you just have to have faith in yourself and the idea of like, look, I made what I felt was the best call at the time. And one of the things that I appreciate about Nick and I is that we are into all of the factions. So generally speaking, there are a lot of mechanics. There's a lot of functions that like we've at least dabbled in them, right? Like we're not such a dedicated faction player where it's like, oh, well, I've never played a unit with Guardian before. Well, we definitely have because we've touched all of the different factions or like anything like that. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, we might be rusty on it. There might have been changes and we might not completely have those off the top of our heads. But I think one of the advantages that Nick and I do have is, like he said, the idea that he's playing with randomized lists. So the amount of times that he's sitting there playing with mechanics that like nobody's playing with, right? That people have maybe even forgotten about. And he's sitting there going like, oh yeah, I've been playing this unit, so yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, I think that's great that both of you dabble in all factions. That's a perfectly great thing to have in your back pocket as a TO. And we're running a little bit long now, and going on to how you guys both play lots of different factions. Last question, since TOing can be a unthanked position most of the time. So when you guys do get to play, what list right now are you playing? Nick, I'm going to start with you and your randomized list.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you do happen to play me across the table or at any events or anything, I do have a system of randomized units to mainly help me start painting a lot of my pile of shame. So it forces me to A, paint, and B, play with new units, understand new command cards, stuff like that. So the TO end of it, sure, it ties all in, but I just want to be able to get more stuff on the table and have my pile of but as of right now, or shrink, but I mean, I guess it is growing with putting together Luke and Hanton as we're doing this recording. But yeah, right now we're playing a experimental droid list with double thick B1s, the snail, triple magna, so it's definitely a list that is not what you see every day. It is definitely unique, to say the least. But I've been having a blast with
especially
it.
the triple magnas.
The triple magnas especially. That has been my favorite thing, to walk up to a table and be like, yeah, these are the EXD version. They're poo-poo. And I'm like, they're 4 health, red save. They just kind of walk at you. And if you don't shoot them, great. They tie you up for however long. You shoot at them, great. I have 15 white and a red critical 1, maybe 16 white, 1 red, 1 black critical 1 shooting at you. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to do. Like, hey, here's a fun, cool, odd thing that you probably have never seen across the table. Let's see how you tackle this.
Do they still have retinue?
Not in EXD.
Not in EXD.
Oh,
this is the EXD.
okay.
So courage 1, 1 health, 4 models base instead of 3. A white.
I think their melee is 1 black and a white.
It's a black and a white
instead of 2 black.
It's a
and they don't surge.
Yep, no surging. They are black and a white, both melee and 2 immune melee pierce, which is still very nice. Easily tie up Jedis or anyone else that's got that melee profile that wants to try to chew through you. Again, it's a 4 health red save. If I get to you, good luck getting me off of you. It's just sticky.
On a quote unquote core unit,
Yeah, on a
having
quote
immune
unquote
melee
core unit.
warriors,
Yeah.
well, that can be sticky,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
All right, Tristan, what about you? What lists have you been liking to play these days?
Oh, I've been fantasizing about a lot of different lists, especially the date that we're recording this, May 14th. To me, the new updates for snipers are still fresh. I've gotten one training game in since that update, and in general, I've been playing a lot of introductory training games. We have a lot of Shatterpoint players who are interested, and I can be criticized for this, but the list that I've been playing a lot lately has been all Imperial Core, Veers, and an ATST. Maybe an ATST isn't the nicest thing to put against newbies, but it's very thematic, right? And I just want them to see it and to interact with it. What I'm excited to try is actually I want to put Leia back on the table because I want to show people just what snipers can die to very quickly and easily with a 1-pip. Also, I was listening to, I assume it was Scoundrels, and listening to somebody talk about Aiden's ID10 2-pip that has me pretty excited. So, and I generally don't play with anything that hasn't been painted, so admittedly Imperial High Command doesn't exist for me yet until they're painted. So yeah, there's a lot of different stuff that I'm excited to put on the table, but as of right now I've been playing more recon games with Imperials to get people understanding the mechanics.
Awesome. All right, so that's about all the time I have for questions, but I do want to talk about some upcoming events. Nick, I know you're hosting a tournament here soon. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the next event that we have for Gamers Guild Tempe is going to be 31st of May. Unsure when of this video is going to be posted, but the game plan for this one, we just closed out the GT, so we're trying to do a bit more of a casual feel to it. So we are going to be using the Dangerous Environment rule set with the new organized play kit, the Hoth play kit with the last, I believe it's called Last Stand environment card. So feel free to come on out, give that a shout. All as every event that we try to host, it is all lists are encouraged, all player skills are encouraged. We want to see as many people out as we can so that we can have a good time.
Awesome. All right, then Tristan, you want to briefly talk about Smite Club Open? I'm thinking we'll have both of you back on a little bit later, closer to Smite Club, to talk about your experience planning that. But you just want to give a quick, brief summary about it.
Nick don't do nothing for Smite. I pull him off of that. Give him a little break. That, and I want to talk about my fun tournament because Keanu, you and I have talked about it, but Nick
oh yes,
yeah. In June, I'm going to have, again, we're going a little bit more casual. We're going to do a doubles tournament with recon armies teaming up, and I've got some specialized rules for that I'm really excited to feature. So I believe that's scheduled for June 30th. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm hoping it goes well. We'll see. But yeah, Smite Club is not too far away at all. In August 22nd, I think it's the 21st and 22nd. I know it's that weekend of the 22nd. Yeah. And actually, Z and I will be running, Zuffer and I, 22nd and 23rd. Zuffer and I will be running that one together. And that one I'm really looking forward to because we have heard back from AMG that we'll be getting some prize support for that. MCP and Shatterpoint will be running GTs, so we won't be an official GT, but we will. Well, I've been thinking of it kind of like a GT Lite, and as of right now, we have a commitment from Bushman to come out and stream that for us. So I'm really excited about that. We're trying to really push some great resources into that. So we're going to get all of those details finalized, and should be a really good time. And again, it's going to be Inferno terrain. I'm going to give out 3 lightsabers because I received 3 earlier this year and I haven't given them away yet, so I'm excited to get rid of those. And That's going to be Smite Club. It's going to be a little bit more expensive than some of our other tournaments, but again, I think we're going to be able to bring some really great prize support for that. And like I said, I give Nick a break on that one on the outside of Gamers Guild.
Yeah, and he'll have a nice time playing his randomized list there. And we'll definitely check out the Discords about the event details later on when we have more info. But that is going to be all for this community spotlight. I'm just going to throw out a reminder of the poll that is going on right now. That is in our Discord and will be up on our YouTube later about if strike teams are good for the game or not. Based off now, we've had like a few more weeks to really digest. So seeing how that is going. But without further ado, this is Inferno Squad Chatter Community Spotlight signing off.
This has been Inferno Squad Chatter. Find us on Discord, Instagram, and Facebook to engage with our team.
Defiance will be the death of you.